be the person that I want my kids to be.
Right. Right.
Like, that's the big thing, right?
Yep.
How do I want my kids to act when they're in a situation, and then I go and do that.
Yeah.
And I do think now, I think it's not what happens to us, it's how we deal with it that most
It
informs
is.
us, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's not the what, it's the how, right?
Yes. Yeah. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever and wherever you are watching or listening. This is the Holistic Monitor, and I'm your host, Nick Sconia. The Holistic Monitor is a wellness podcast featuring life energy research, health and wellness transformation, self-improvement and empowerment, philosophy, spirituality, and now guest interviews as well. We look forward to your comments on our YouTube channel at Holistic Monitor, and you can also listen on the go with us at Spotify, Amazon Music, Apple Podcasts, and more. And with that, let's get today's show started. Okay. Jay Marie, you have written a book, and this book is about your son.
It is. But mostly it's about me and my reaction to my son.
Okay.
Because it was I want to be thoughtful in my answer. It was my son went from being a 3.85 grade point average. He was almost straight A's to falling off the edge of the earth into drugs.
Right.
And he was 14. And it was startling to me because I had a really there was a lot of trauma in my childhood. And I had done a lot of therapy, and I'd been sober for more than 20 years, and his father and I were still together, and his father had been sober for longer than I had, and we went to church every Sunday, and we lived in this real sweet middle class neighborhood of all of these mid-century homes. And he went to school with the same kids he'd always been to school with. It was like a really stable environment. And then just it felt like our family fell through the floor. And I didn't handle it well because I thought I was in control. I thought I like baking a cake. I just have to put all the right ingredients into this kid and it'll work. And then it didn't.
Yeah.
And I really got lost. And it was very hard for our family. I did I still had a business to run, but I spent almost all of my extra energy besides the business in maintaining this kid's sobriety. We did, the therapies and try to get him to go back to church. And we did, and we're not, I should explain that we're Episcopalian. So, it doesn't make it, there's not a lot of rules in the Episcopal Church. So I didn't think it would be hard to have him go, because there's not a lot of rules. You could be whoever you want to in the Episcopal Church, and they'll be fine with it. In any case, I had to really look at my own perceptions of who I thought my kids are, which is I really thought that they were mine, that I was, like I said, was in control, and that I could control them and their lives, and that they belonged to me. And then I just had to, through a lot of pain and learning and meetings and all the things that I do to be maintain as a stable person, I had to keep doing all that and learning that these kids have their own ideas
Yeah.
and it wasn't me. And it might have been me. I mean, it's weird because it it doesn't the fact that it could have been me or would have been me is not like that. To blame for all of this is kind of inconsequential. It's not substantial because I can't make someone do heroin.
Right. Right.
Like, I'm not that powerful that I can make a kid go from being a straight A student to a heroin addict.
Right. Yeah, you had basically set the stage. You had done as much as you could to foster an environment that was going to be safe,
Mhm,
and the current epidemic that we're all watching and living through with
mhm.
the heroin and, well, I guess it's the fentanyl and all of that,
Yeah,
um, found its way through, and at a
yeah.
young age too, which is really tricky. 14 years old.
Mhm.
There probably was peer pressure of some sort involved if it wasn't a specific injury that began the process. And that's really tough. It's what the friends are doing or the way that the friends are going.
Well, he wasn't a super popular kid. He was, shy.
Mm-hmm.
Lord of the Rings was his big dirty secret. He
Mm,
loved Lord of the Rings, read it I don't know how many times, but it was like
yeah.
that was who he was, is
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
geeky kid that liked the History Channel and the science and all of that,
Right.
and he just simply didn't wanna be that guy anymore.
Right.
He wanted to be cool,
Yeah.
and, that in AA, I can't help but talk about AA because AA is me, right?
Mm-hmm.
But,
Mm-hmm.
um I drank the Kool-Aid, I guess.
Yeah.
Um, I, we have an expression that's it's liquid courage,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that he found his liquid courage,
Right.
and we sent him away to one of those boarding schools,
Mm-hmm.
where they held him hostage for a year,
Okay.
and that was very costly. And I had shopped for one that was, not going to be abusive, because there are certain schools, like, if you send them out of country, they
Hmm.
could they can withhold food, water, and they can even hit the kid,
Okay.
which
Wow.
wasn't it wasn't like I didn't think he needed a good beating, because I certainly did, but I didn't think it would be a part of the solution. I
Right.
mean, I
Right.
wanted to beat him, I wasn't beating him, but boy, oh boy, holy shit.
Yeah.
So I did not do that. We chose a school in, Nevada,
Mm-hmm.
and then he got moved to Utah, and, so the program was built for the whole family.
Mm-hmm.
So we all participated in the program with him. Um, the program was not successful, by the way.
Right. Right.
I mean,
And a lot of them aren't. A lot of them aren't.
for him,
Yeah.
but for us as a family,
Right.
it was hugely successful
Yeah.
because for a year, I got to sell my house because I had to pay for what I was doing, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I got to move the business, and we, as a family, got a respite
Yeah.
from the the toxicity and the violence and the
Mm-hmm.
just because he actually becomes violent.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, that's a lot.
I have 2 younger children, by the way.
Okay. Younger than him. Yeah.
Younger than him, yeah.
Yeah, it's and starting at 14, you know, that's a very transitional time period in life for everybody.
Mhm,
It seems like the world is um, unattainable, and time is, so long. It's going to be so long until they're out of the teenage years, whatever that is for them. 14 years old, you're really in the grip of those around you, of wanting to fit in,
mhm,
of wanting to have more experience than you have, which I think leads to a
mhm,
lot of exploration. And if the substances are there, that's what they're going to do is explore the substances. Depending, but we're seeing a lot of that, and this specific substance is very tricky when it gets in you because it really grabs on and doesn't want to let go, you know.
mm-mm.
And then you think you're directly dealing with the consciousness of your son when you're actually dealing with this filter that's over top of all of that. And it's really difficult, and it takes their willpower, and that's a tough one. It takes the person's willpower to overcome that kind of filter. Very tricky.
And, if they don't wanna do it, they don't wanna do it.
It has to be their decision. Yeah,
It
yeah,
has
and
to be their decision, and so then that leaves me with my own decision.
right.
Like, what do I do then?
Yeah.
And then that's where the rubber hits the road for me,
Mm,
because I had to make some really hard choices, and I had to choose between him and my other 2 kids.
mm, mm-hmm.
Was I going to continue in the toxicity, or was I going to, let him have his own journey
Right.
and then let my other 2 do what they need to do, which is to continue to grow up? And
Yeah.
so, um, I, uh, I gave him the stuff he needed to be homeless.
Mm-hmm.
He, had come home after, because I had been putting him through school. I thought, because he had been living on his own, and, I had been helping him by paying the rent because he had decided he was gonna go to school, and then he backslid into the heroin, and then his landlord found him nearly dead.
Mm,
So, he came home for, I don't know, 3 months or 3 weeks, sorry, and, cleaned up. We fattened him up and everything, and then, we said, "You can't stay here, but we have this rehab for you." And then he did not choose the rehab. So we took him to Target, and
mm-hmm.
we bought him stuff that he needed to be homeless, and then we sent him on his way to be homeless.
And that was the best
Back
you could
to
do in that moment because you were basically choosing, for him to be on the journey that he
Mhm.
was going to be on until he chose not to be on that specific path so that you could continue shepherding your 2 other kids
Yeah,
and kind of shield them from that situation as much as possible.
it's absolutely the most painful thing I've ever done,
Mm-hmm.
and I had to reexamine all of the thought processes that came into me being a parent. And my perspective on parenthood has evolved 360,
Mm.
really,
Yeah.
as I just really know that our children are, they're humans, and
Yeah.
they're gonna do stuff that they have a right to their own lives.
Yeah.
And, I'm just there to help guide, but that's all I get to be, as a passenger in their life, and that my life has value, and
Right.
that I have a responsibility for my own life. And I know moms don't say that very often, and I know I'm speaking counterculture right now because the belief is that a mom can't be happier than their least happy child. But
Hmm.
but again, I have a responsibility for my own life. And having 2 broken people, him and I,
Right.
doesn't make a lick of sense, and it's not honoring what I have been given.
Well, yeah. And that you said a very important thing, which is that you're there to lay the groundwork. You're there to, my term is shepherd, and
Mhm,
not engineer, because
mhm. Oh,
engineering
that's
means
a
you're going
good
to hold
way to
on.
say it.
What's that?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, with engineering, you think, I've done everything and now it's not working. And you have done everything and it is working. It's just now making its own decisions, in that sense.
Yeah,
Uh,
that's true. That's true.
you did
That's so
everything.
true. Right.
But what happens, and I've watched a lot of intervention,
Oh, you
and
have.
you learn a lot. And one thing that you learn from intervention, or at least for me, I should say, that I learned from intervention is that you need to know when to say when. You need to know when to cut off and allow that person to take their own path, which is, I love how you said, it's his own journey. Um, you need to know when that is, and you need to know your own tolerance level, and stick to it. And
Well,
you never know.
one of the things that was really helpful to me was that, I thought about all of my experiences, good and bad,
Hmm.
how, every bit of those experiences, particularly the painful ones,
Yeah.
have informed who I am,
Right.
and who am I to take that away from him? And I get that he might not live through this.
Right.
I fully comprehend that, and I'm still respectful enough of him to say, I love you, and I know you're gonna eventually make the right decision. I just I can't see how me not respecting him
Hmm.
is going to help him.
Yeah. It's a battle. It is a battle, but it's his battle. And
Mhm,
you have grown through the experience. You've gained experience.
mhm.
You've fought, and you have won a few battles yourself in the same conflict. But
Yeah,
it is
that's
his
so
full
true.
battle. Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, you're coming out of it, and it sounds like you're coming out of it stronger, more on your feet, more sober.
100%.
You know.
More sober,
Yeah.
more committed,
Right.
more, and I can't if I tell you how I can't even talk about how grateful I am that I made the decision I made
Yeah.
to let the other 2 kids grow. My daughter is now she's graduated from UC Santa Cruz with a degree in physics,
Hmm.
and now she's getting her doctorate at Davis in
Hmm.
physics. Now, had we had someone in the house like we did,
Right.
which was just so tumultuous, I I don't think that she could have done what I don't think she could have done that.
Right.
And then my youngest son is, he's a student, he's going to graduate in, December with a degree in law enforcement.
Wow.
I
Wow.
mean, I'm sorry, criminal justice, and then he goes to the Academy of
Hmm.
Long Beach in January. And
Okay.
again, these 2 people would not be doing as well
Right.
if I hadn't made the choice to let my oldest figure it out for himself.
Right. And even your other kids have also come out of it with experience and and that experience may
Mhm.
have guided their choices in their lives. Law
Right.
enforcement sounds kind of like there may be a reason for that, you know.
Oh, right, and he's also been sober. My youngest has been sober. He's 21, but he's been sober for 3.5 years.
Hmm.
'Cause he saw where he what he was doing as his use
Yeah.
was destructive, so he got on his path right away.
And he had an example with an older
Absolutely.
brother to say, oh, okay, well, I see where this is going.
Right.
And not everybody has that. Not everybody has the wherewithal to, look inside or look outside to gain
Mhm.
more intelligence for themselves inside. So it's
Right.
really up to each and individual person. And, again, what you can do is you can, have the right grounds and do all of the right things that you can do for yourself. And in a sense, you're doing them for yourself because they're still going to make
Being
their
an
choices all
example
along. Yeah.
yeah, being an example is the best like, be the person that I want my kids to be.
Right. Right.
Like, that's the big thing, right?
Yep.
How do I want my kids to act when they're in a situation, and then I go and do that.
Yeah.
And I do think now I think it's not what happens to us, it's how we deal with it that most
It
informs
is.
us, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because it's not the what, it's the how, right?
Yes. Yeah. And
Yeah.
it's really tricky because we get lost and caught in our own activity and in our own emotional responses, and
Mhm.
we're human. That's just the way it works. But
Right.
um, it's temperament, and it's tempering that temperament to where
Ooh, I
things
like
aren't as
that
sharp.
word.
They're not as explosive, that there's more guidance, there's more an understanding of the outcome based on previous experience. And then for you as the
Uh-huh.
parent to be the big mirror, this is what they're seeing, this is what they're becoming.
Right.
They're going to be their own person making the choices off of what they see in the big mirror of themselves. And you're
Yeah.
a fine example of how you dealt with a very, obviously, very extreme situation. They saw how you dealt with that.
Yeah.
And um, while they're not free from their own struggles, they at least have an example as to how to deal with struggle, and which is fantastic. It's a great ground. Again, as a non-engineer, as a shepherd of your kids, you've shown them what it's like to do that and how to do it in the best way you can for you.
One of the things that I did start, I don't know why, but it occurred to me that a lot of the parenting that happens around me is all about perfection.
Mm,
And oh, so and so got straight A's and blah blah blah, right?
right.
And one of the things that has um kind of changed with my parenting since all of this has happened is that I make sure to tell the kids, "Oh no, you are going to fail."
Mm.
Like that if you're not failing, you're not trying. It's just what are you failing at? Like are you failing a test in physics or are you failing to pay a parking ticket? There's it to think of us as whole people and that we're not capable of being perfect and to just um, expect that you are going to make mistakes and stop being so afraid of them.
Yeah. Yeah, that's deep. That's good.
No, I mean, I don't know. Like, it's just what that's one of the things that I learned from this whole thing is, oh crap, I made a lot of mistakes.
Right.
And I only made the mistakes because I was doing something.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
mean, I did a lot right, but I made a lot of mistakes too. And
Yeah.
that's just part of it.
It's like the shoot for the moon. If you don't make it, at least you're among the stars. That sort of
Exactly,
idea.
right?
Hey,
Right.
but
But
that's a
just
good
us
place to be.
not, yeah,
Yeah.
true. Yeah.
That's a good life lesson. And something good to promote. In your book, do you go through, is it like a novel of sorts where you're going through the storyline, or are you delving
Oh,
into instruction, or what's the
no,
formatting?
I just tell the story. It's kind of interesting. So I do, it starts, it's, I don't know. It's, well, some people might find my humor offensive.
Hmm.
It's I don't try and make it offensive, but what I do try and do is, it starts with the story opens up with my son burning the Bible on the
Hmm.
stove,
Wow.
because it's just like that, right?
Right.
That's the kind of stuff that was happening in our household on the regular.
Hmm.
And so a big part of what I was doing in telling the story is telling the trauma, but also with with a narration of what how did I get here?
Yeah.
Like,
Can you believe this?
this is
Yeah.
insane.
Right.
Like, and so I did see the humor
Yeah.
in it, because I would have gone crazy if I didn't.
Right.
Um and one of my defense mechanisms is to I don't know, is to laugh
To laugh.
or
Yeah.
make fun of things when
Right.
they're,
Yeah.
like, so awful that I don't know what to do with it. I make it funny. So the book is, obviously everybody in it except for the people that were the heroes of the story.
Hmm.
I'm not the hero.
Hmm.
Every one of us is that isn't the hero is, anonymous.
Right. Right.
So it's the true story of my family, but we're all anonymous.
Right.
And mostly I talk about the stuff that we how we got here, what we did to try, and then most of the book is about me trying to recover myself,
Hmm.
and
Mm-hmm.
to get me to do what I know I should do, which is to let go.
Yeah.
But letting go was unbearable.
The hardest
Like,
thing,
I
right?
just couldn't know what to do with my arms,
Hmm.
and my legs felt like jelly all the time, and I cried a lot, but during all of this, I learned to dance. I
Yeah.
started Zumba classes, and
Hmm.
I just started doing things that I had never done before so that I could think about something else besides my own life.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a
I
lot, right?
climbed
Because
a
you're going through
mountain.
your own trauma and
Mhm.
processing, and what methods worked for you to find your way to balance and to a place where you could breathe.
Yeah, no, it was, a lot of it had to do with me doing physical things,
Mm-hmm.
like just, running out my, energy, like climbing a mountain. We trained to climb Mount Shasta. We climbed
Mm.
Shasta, and, a lot of, triathlon and stuff like that.
Right. Kept very
Um
active then. That was the method
Mhm.
that you used, was of distraction so that
Yeah,
you had
to
time to
burn
heal.
my energy
Yeah.
off,
Right.
so that I could get in bed and go to sleep and have a whole night's sleep,
Yeah.
because it was so painful.
Yeah.
And I so understand why people are not ready to let go. But what I worried about by me not letting go, I actually had a fear,
Mm.
which was that he was 22 when I let go entirely. And I worried that if I let go too late and if I had codepended him, that I was burning up his life.
Mm.
I was
Mm.
keeping him from getting to his own solution.
Right.
So I worried that every day that I was codepending him was keeping him out of college. It was
Mm.
allowing him to still stay very active in the using life, so
Yeah.
that he was getting deeper and deeper entrenched with those people and those women, and they worried he would start being, have a child,
Mm-hmm.
or, start dragging other people into it.
Right.
And so I worried about me codepending him would, permit that to happen. And I quite frankly, initially, I wanted to be the hero that came in and saved his life.
Yeah.
Of course I did. I'm his mom,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
I wanted to be that person. I
Yeah.
I wanted him to I had like it in my head that he would be speaking in an AA meeting and say, if my mom didn't believe in me, if she didn't keep going, then I would, supporting me, then I wouldn't be here today. That was all about me. That had nothing to do with what is actually good for him.
Right. You were seeing your mirror. Yeah.
Oh God, it was
Right.
so painful. And I just had so many people against me, just saying things like, "How could you let your kid go?" And
Yeah. Right.
it
Right.
was it wasn't a popular decision, not
No.
in my neck of the woods. I come from, the land of the snowplow parent.
Hmm.
You know, the
Snowplow.
the parent that moves everything out of their
Hmm.
kids' way, so they don't even see the danger that's coming. They don't
Hmm.
even have any idea that their lives are being curated for them.
Hmm.
That's the land of parenting I live in.
Right. Wow.
That's
Interesting.
crazy talk.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that falls in the line of engineering versus shepherding. Um,
Absolutely. Yeah, we're
orchestrating
using I'm
where's the
sorry,
road,
yes.
here's the walls, there's
Yeah,
no
just do
turning, no
this.
moving. Yeah.
Right. You're gonna believe what I believe, you're gonna do
Right.
what I do, and it's all gonna turn out fine because it turned out fine for me.
But they're also living with blinders because, again, they're dealing with somebody with choices of their own. Once they get to a certain age, they're going to start
Yeah,
making their own decisions, going to find their
right,
own way behind their back. And,
right.
sometimes they'll
And
go
there
along with it, but then at some point, likely, they'll find a breakaway. And they may be very counter to that direction the plow was going, on purpose. It may be very opposite.
oh, it's so true. Like,
Yeah,
it can't be more opposite.
right.
Yeah,
Because we as human beings typically want to gain experience in life and feel that FOMO, that fear of missing out on things that we didn't do or weren't able to do or weren't allowed to do. So we want to go seek them out when we're free and able, or we make time to be free and able, even if we're not allowed to do those things that we're told no to, you can't do that or whatever, maybe without a direct, obvious reason. It's just we want to explore. We want to become more uh, full of experience. It seems like that's a blessing and a curse because it happens at a young age, and there are a lot of dangers out there, and it's really hard to prepare. You can plow all you want. There's just a zillion things going on out in the world. The internet being a really big source of a lot of variables. Um, it's really tough. Now, for your situation with
mhm,
your son,
mhm.
was his beginning in this, was it inspired by friends, was it inspired by an
Oh,
activity?
um, so he was getting, so the 2008 crisis had a lot to do with this.
Hmm.
The financial
Oh
meltdown.
yeah, okay.
Our family, there were appraisers,
Mm-hmm.
and the financial meltdown hit us particularly hard.
Yeah.
He was going to go to a private Catholic school that costs $15,000 a year,
Mm. Wow.
and we felt like it would be a good place for him since he was so shy and he was bright and the whole thing. He had it all going on.
Yeah.
and he had worked particularly hard to get there.
Hmm.
And then I made a decision, and I still, to this day, I still sit with this decision, that I made to not send him there because I didn't know what we would be looking at. I didn't know, would I have to change schools for him
Right.
midway because I couldn't afford it anymore. I didn't want him to be the poor kid in class,
Hmm. Mm-hmm.
where everybody else is going off to Aspen for
Right.
Easter and we're not. We're
Yeah.
eating top ramen.
Right.
Um, like that those are
Very
thoughts
real,
I
though.
had.
Yeah.
What?
Very
Those
real
are those
decisions.
are
Yeah.
real thoughts I
Yeah.
was having. And
Hmm.
so I decided not to, and I don't know if he used it as an excuse. My inclination is to say that I am responsible a bit, and he is more responsible. 'Cause
Yeah.
there's nothing more I can like, I can't, I don't rule the world today.
There's nothing you can do. And so he was in
Right.
school. He found new friends or the same
Yeah.
friends or something like that. And
He went to high school. It wasn't what the school was really large.
yeah.
We have very large schools here, so the high school was really large.
Hmm.
I took him out of the high school as soon as I realized, "Oh, we've got a real problem." I
Right.
started homeschooling. I could not find a fit for him,
Hmm.
and he didn't want a fit is what it
Due to
came
his
down
use,
to.
though, right? It was.
Yeah, he
Yeah.
just didn't. He was like, "I have found the answer."
Right.
And I get it, because I remember what my first drink felt like. I was like,
Right.
"Oh, this is what I've been looking for my whole life."
Yeah.
So, of course he did. I
Yeah.
understood it perfectly and why
Yeah.
he wouldn't want to, right? I
Even
mean,
more so because
finally,
it's a heavy intoxicant, so it's even
well, he
more
didn't
than we can
start
imagine.
on heroin, by the
Oh, okay.
way.
So what was the
Did
gateway
not
for
start
him?
at the gateway was, so he was using alcohol frequently, stealing it, and not from our
Hmm.
house. We don't have alcohol in the house, but he was stealing it from like Target and stuff
Hmm.
like that,
Oh, wow.
right?
Okay.
And then he was using marijuana a lot,
Hmm.
and ecstasy,
Mm.
and a
Mm.
thing called Thiz, and it's a concoction with an amphetamine component,
Wow. Okay. I don't know that one.
MDMA,
Wow. Mm.
and it's got an opioid component to it,
It's a whole
and
mix, a
he
whole
was doing
cocktail.
that at 14.
At 14, yeah, it's
Mhm.
tough.
It's young.
Yeah, it's very young. Yeah, but it's
Mhm.
also for me, I also had a bout with substances at 14 and depression and all of that. And my mom did some efforts to try and help me out of that, which I ended up having to make my own decision to be a different person that wasn't a person doing drugs.
Mhm.
Um, but I had the setup so that we did outpatient therapy and things like that. Those didn't really help, but they did help. In the moment, they didn't. It wasn't until I decided that I needed a change of scenery with my friends that
Oh,
I
that's
was able to
nice.
adjust out of it and be my own individual person. Um,
Mhm.
and I feel like I got lucky because I could have sat there for a while in that space. I could have hung out with those people and partied, older kids, as it usually is. It's, somebody that has a car at 14 years old, somebody has a car is like liberated, you know,
You're right.
doing whatever they're doing. And if they're exploring drinking or smoking or whatever, that's what you're
Uh-huh.
doing too.
Yeah.
And I was very not hidden about it. I'm at 14 years old. I was telling people of my exploits at school, and they were the ones that reported me. And the counselor called me in. They were like, "We had somebody really concerned about you, saying that you were, partying and doing all this stuff over the weekend. I was like, yeah, absolutely. Very cavalier, like, yeah, that's what I was doing. But that of course led towards me having outpatient and everybody being alerted to the fact that, oh, I was doing stuff.
Uh-huh.
Again, it was my decision to stray from the group of friends.
Mhm.
And if I hadn't done that, I'd be in a very different place because that lifestyle was, for them, led in a very completely different direction. I then went back into substance use again, and it seemed to be a cyclical behavior that I had for a number of years where I would go in and out.
Mhm.
The second time when I stopped, it was kind of forced by the substances because there was more hallucinogenic, more mental. And I made another conscious decision to no longer do, like, I made a deal with myself, like, this is it, it's over. And that didn't stick. But the next time that I did the substances, I did it on my own terms, in control,
Mhm.
versus as abuse or as recreation or escapism. So
Right.
it really changed as I got older and got more mature to what I was wanting out of it if I wanted to do it. Um, it sounds like he got, quote unquote, hooked. And
Mhm.
the energy, the escapism, the ability
Mhm.
to not have the responsibilities that are set forth for you and just do your own thing. That, many people get trapped in it, and
And I think
because
he
it's very
did I
comfortable.
think he was scared of growing up.
Yeah.
I
Well,
think
you said
that's what it
he had
really
shyness and,
I think he was really, really scared.
yeah, a lot of
And,
reservations.
I think that there's so many I could see why it would be scary to grow up right now. Like, where
Right.
you like,
Well,
where
probably always, because when you're at that age, like, the time, it's like, will it ever come? And there's so much. If you are shy or reserved and you're in
Mhm.
a large school, there are a lot of kids that are not shy and not reserved, and
Mhm.
that's a very large, like, where do you fit in that? You don't, because they have
Right.
the assertive energy. If you don't have that assertive energy, you might feel like you need liquid courage. You need to get that sort of energy to be on top of the pack,
Mhm.
and that seems to be a necessity. Even if it's
Mhm.
online in your own forum or in person at school, there's that need to be the leader or snappy or something that you don't have already installed. It's very daunting. I feel like that's concurrent, probably forever. It's definitely exacerbated now, I think, because there's so much intrusion with the internet being in our lives. And
Mhm.
but I think that role at school, if you look back at what was that movie called? Where they all have to stay after school.
Ah,
It's
The
from the
Breakfast
80s.
Club.
Breakfast Club.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Oh my
yeah, yeah,
gosh.
yeah.
I'm going to get it for that
Great
one.
soundtrack. Oh my
Yeah, great
goodness. Good
soundtrack.
soundtrack.
And
Yeah.
they gave you, like, all the different roles of
Mhm.
kids in at that time. Really
Sure.
hasn't changed. We don't use the same terms, but we still have the same personality types at play at school. And if you're not,
Yeah, there's a reason that the movie still plays
yeah,
today,
yeah,
right?
it's very relevant. Yeah,
It's very relevant even today.
I
But I
think that.
do think that it's
Hmm.
been hyper.
Well, yes, because a lot has changed. Information has
Mhm.
changed, and
Right.
the having the ability to have lots of different ideas come into effect for a person as to what they can do to handle the problems that they feel like they have. They have a lot of different ideas of how to fix things or how to escape from them, and they
Mhm.
have access. So there's those two. The access is a big one, but also just the idea. Information is dangerous if not guided. And that's my thought anyway. If you don't have a guiding hand for information, then you can pull anything up on the internet. It can be very dangerous for somebody that's impressionable. If they're watching videos on YouTube, they can think many different interesting things out of that and come up with really weird ideas that may not have any basis in reality. It can be very dangerous, detrimental. Having all that wide swath of information or influences or other people that have the information and the influences, even if they don't, I feel like that can seep in and just cause a lot of turmoil. It's very different than
I
the 80s.
I also think that because you're right that there's, you know, it, like how a comedian recently said, who would think that having all of the information at your disposal would make humankind so stupid?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I
Basically.
think
Yeah.
there is some logic in that, and I also think that prior to the internet, uh, your neighbors or your peers were just the people directly around you.
Right.
And because we live around people kind of in the same socioeconomic status as us,
Mm-hmm.
then that means that that we only want slightly more than what we already have. So it may be attainable.
Yeah.
But with the internet and Facebook, yeah, our peers can be a
Anywhere.
lot more wealthy than
Mm.
us.
Right.
And so it's not just a step or 2 above us in
Yeah.
terms of status. And that could lead to a lot of shame
Mm. Mm-hmm.
and diminishing of a person.
Right.
Um, I know that the suicide rates have gone up dramatically
Yeah.
since the iPhone has been in the predominant
Mm.
American hands.
How about
That
that?
that there's a correlation, not just you know they were recognizing that it was correlation, but now they're seeing it also as causation.
Yeah.
That they're narrowing that down. That it's too toxic for young kids.
Mm-hmm.
And I was not the parent that had my kids on Facebook. I didn't allow Facebook for my kids, but it is true that when he went away, we found his Facebook.
Yeah.
He was the only kid with Facebook in my house. The
Mm.
other 2 didn't have Facebook until they were 18,
Right.
and I didn't give them those kind of phones. They had flip phones with no internet on it until they were graduated from high school, because
Yeah.
I just didn't think it was safe for them
Right.
and wanted them to grow up first.
Mm.
So one of the things that got me moving in the direction of health,
Yeah.
whole health, not just, not just AA meetings
Mm.
and, church and all that, but, I had colitis.
Mm.
I got colitis really bad during all
Yeah.
of this,
Oh,
and
okay.
I wasted, and it was I I could not hold food or hold my weight for about almost a year,
Mm.
and it was directly related to my own emotional well-being. It
Yeah.
was that this crap that I'd been storing in me from my childhood,
Right.
from the recent trauma, because it all came surface all at the same time,
Mm.
was eating me from the inside out. It
Yeah.
was awful. And so that I I I was not physically doing well either.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
had to get my I had to do something or I wasn't gonna make it.
Right. Yeah. Let's circle it back into that.
That's actually in the book too,
Is it
where I
okay?
talk about how I'm just losing weight and I can't stop losing weight.
So, in the book, you go through the story format
Mhm.
of the situation
Mhm.
and also how you resolved, um, were found to work through your own situation relating to his addiction.
Mhm.
Um, you tried a lot of efforts, a lot of things, and
Mhm.
efforted a lot to find a way for him to see out. And is he still living?
He is alive. He is homeless in Portland.
Hmm.
Um, I am not currently engaged with him. I send him text messages every once in a while, and I'll say, "Don't respond. I just need you to know I love you." Um, and I've offered him a year of treatment. If he
Mm-hmm.
wants it, I'll support him in an SLE, sober living environment.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but for my own health, because when we do talk, he's very abusive.
Mm. Okay.
He's just very angry
Yeah.
about me and that I sent him away.
Right.
I mean, he doesn't see any part of what he was doing
Yeah. And because he's still using.
because he's still, yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, yeah, like,
He's still looking through the lens, the filter, and it's not really directly him. It's this entity that's curtailed in him that is basically in control of what he says, what he does, what he thinks, where he goes, all of that. So it's paramount for him to rid himself of this thing in him, um, before he's able to start doing that reflection, doing the deep work. It's just not gonna happen until he gets rid of it. And
I
and there's a
agree.
million and one ways to do it, but he has to actually take
Mhm.
that first step, and then of course
Right.
stick to it too,
Mhm.
and not play the game of back and forth. He really
Mhm.
needs to just get out and stay out so that he
Mhm.
can start working on himself. And at that point, you know, you may have already thought this through where he did do that, and he sees a different light and sees the world in a different way. Um, but right now he's probably still 14 years old, and he's still in there at that age. Everything else that's
Mhm.
transpired is this entity, this thing in him that's
Mhm.
taken over, is having a whole different
Yeah.
experience. But he's still 14, in there.
And the thing is that I I was able to stop talking to him because I this is really hard actually.
Yeah.
I had continued to talk to him because I missed him. And then one day it occurred to me while I was listening to him that I haven't spoken to him in years.
Right. Yeah.
I haven't, like, I've only been interacting with the drug,
Yeah.
waiting for
Pop out.
glimpses of him, for
Yeah.
like tiny little just granular seconds of recognition of the person that was,
Mm-hmm.
the real him. But the abuse and the physical pain and the all of it that went with it from me interacting with him and his drug, it wasn't enough
Yeah.
for me to wait for those tiny little seconds where
Right.
I see him.
It's
And
detrimental to
in
you.
all
Yeah.
and in all honesty, um, as long as I think that I can heal him,
Mm-hmm.
he thinks I can heal him.
Mm-hmm.
So any suggestion that I'm making that will make this better, or that I can do anything for him, he completely believes me, and I can't. It has to be him. And
Yeah.
it's just so painful. I would do anything for me to be able to solve this, and I can't.
Right. Yeah, it's
Um,
it's it's for him to realize that all you're doing is opening a door. You're offering a way for him out, and
right,
not through you.
right.
You're giving him an offer of a year of sober living, which is fantastic. It's amazing, you know. Um,
But just to get his feet on the ground and do and
but
like, it doesn't have to be about me at all. It
right,
just
but
do
it
what he
isn't
needs
you,
to
and that's
do.
the thing. You're just
Mhm.
offering the payment of the place. Like here
Yeah,
it
he
is.
has
You're
to do
actually
it.
not. It isn't you. He's just seeing it
Mm-mm.
as you, as a gateway out. You're gonna heal him, but that's not really what the case is. It's gonna all be him. He's gonna go somewhere, and you're not gonna be there. He's gonna be working on himself
Yeah,
at some point.
right.
Yeah.
In fact, I'm more dangerous to him,
Right.
and
Yeah.
we're not good for each other.
Right. Yeah. There's a
One of the
toxicity
things
there.
one of the things that I write in the book, and I worry a tiny bit that some folks might find, questionable.
Hmm.
There's a scene in the book where, I, he gives me a canister of Narcan and says, "Oh, you should keep this in case I overdose." And I said, "No, uh, I'm not gonna follow you around the house,
Hmm.
and you're just gonna have to keep yourself alive."
Hmm.
'Cause I so much appreciate, that there's these I actually worked in one for a while, they're called I'm so blanking on the name. Um, where they can get clean needles
Yeah.
exchanges,
Exchange. Yeah. Needle exchange.
and I appreciate those
Mm-hmm.
in that because he had Hep C from
Yeah.
using a dirty needle, but they offer the Narcan,
Hmm.
and the way the Narcan is used, I'm not sure if folks know this, um, but they use the Narcan to use fentanyl.
Hmm.
So when someone dies of a fentanyl overdose, their friends go look for that dose, that batch,
Hmm.
because they know it's gonna be a good high. They know it's
Right.
gonna be the best high of their life.
Yeah.
And then someone sits there with the Narcan, and in case the user dies, they'll go ahead and bring him back to life.
Yeah.
And I think that is so indicative of what we do in our society, which is we try and offer safety nets,
Yeah.
and then the safety nets get abused. And so it makes it even harder to help the person because it sort of helps them stay in the life
Right. It
as they
enables.
know they have these safety nets.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
And
it's tricky.
I'm not sure, like, and I know some folks are gonna find that offensive that I wouldn't keep the Narcan in my house.
Hmm.
But I just wanted him to know he was operating without a net.
Yeah. That was your way of saying, no, you're going to get better. You're not going to need this. I'm not going to help you with this. You're going to get better. And saying
Yeah,
he was going to not kill himself, basically. You're going to
yeah,
do it yourself.
yeah,
And
like, if you're
you know,
gonna like, I can't follow you around.
right,
I have my own life, and I have responsibilities that don't involve keeping a Narcan
right,
canister in my pocket while I try and keep this person alive that isn't taking responsibility for keeping themselves alive,
right. Yeah. It's a
which
war
is
zone. It's a war zone.
so absolutely unpopular
Mm-hmm.
these days to say something like that, but I just feel like, um, like it's his life, and I know that's really I know.
You got to that place
I did.
where you
I
said,
had
no,
to
this is your
actually let
situation.
go.
This is not my situation.
Yeah.
You know, you don't want to be a part of that world.
And supporting him in that world.
That's basically what ends up happening. And like I said, it's a war zone. It's just there's things going on all over the place. People are dying everywhere. It's insane. It's completely insane, and it's really hard to tell what the proper way to be is. One thing that people do is they just say, I'm not going to fight in the battle. I'm not going to entertain the back and forth. And you know, for you, you want salvation. You want to save him, but you want him to actually be saved, and you want him to make that decision. And if you're helping him along and enabling him to potentially take a lethal dose, knowing that he's got a safety net right next door, right in the room, or whatever,
Yeah.
you didn't really help.
No, I
Yeah,
didn't.
you
I just
said, "Hey, no worries, I got you. You're
I
in a
got
safe
you.
space."
Right. Like,
Um,
I'm your mom. I'm here for you forever, and you
yeah.
just go do what you know, that didn't that doesn't feel like good parenting.
Well, and the issue then
It's
also
hard
comes to say,
parenting.
what are we dealing with? And it's not that we're dealing with the kids. We're dealing with this drug. We're dealing with
Right.
that, and what it's like. I mean, it is what it is. It's like when humans get hooked on something, then they turn into something that's not sober, not a normal situation with a human. They become these
Mhm.
little zombies for this entity, for this drug.
That's
And
funny. I think we're in the zombie apocalypse right now. It just doesn't I know that sounds really crazy, but if you think about what we're looking at, like in those zombie movies,
mhm.
this is the zombie apocalypse. It just looks different than we thought it would.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it doesn't spread the same way, luckily. But yeah, I used to live outside of Philadelphia, and it's a very well known area for heroin abuse and
Oh, okay.
fentanyl. Needle Alley. There's been a lot of
Yeah.
documentaries on North Philadelphia.
Yep.
Um,
I've
there's
watched quite a few myself.
Yeah, there's videos you can just
Mhm.
just somebody taking a video down the street and watching just the things going on the street, and yeah, it looks like
Mhm.
Zombieland basically.
Mhm.
Um, it is like an alien has inhabited a person, and they are acting on accord with that alien. It's got control of what's going on, of what their desires are. It really has clutches in there, and
Mhm.
you on the outside, there's not much you can do. You can
Mhm.
isolate, you can do a lot of things, but the all those tendrils are still going to be in there. So no matter how much you extricate, it has to be a personal decision for the person. They have to
Mhm.
basically learn to hate it, learn to fight it, learn to
Mhm.
cage it,
Mhm.
and learn to observe their own self as
Mhm.
they interact with this caged thing in them.
Mhm.
And then they have to learn to ultimately, once they're really in control, to let that go and let it go, just let it go.
Mhm.
You know, to
Right.
not associate it with it. Most of us get to the point where we cage it and we observe
Mhm.
it, and that's safe for a lot of people, and
Mhm.
that works
Mm.
for a lot of people. And for a lot of people, having a caged animal in them isn't safe either. It's still there. They need
Mm.
to learn how to actually rid themselves of that identity or
Mhm.
that entity. I'm okay with people caging it and maintaining observation of that. And what I'm talking about is like AA or NA. I think
Mhm.
people being in a safe zone where they have caged this thing still in
Mhm.
them and they're observant of it, they can watch it, they learn it, and they can see how
Mhm.
it tries to influence them, and they can learn
Mhm.
a lot about it. They still need
Mhm.
to hate it, they still need to control it, but
Mhm.
if that's as far as they get, that's really, it's fine. They're
Mhm.
always still going to be associated energetically with that thing because it's
Mhm.
still in there. It
Mhm.
isn't until you release it and no longer are part of it that you get rid of it completely. And that is ultimate freedom, right? That would be, I'm not an addict. I'm just not an addict, even if you
Hmm.
have had a history of doing it. This
Yeah.
thing is no longer got control. You know it, absolutely, 100%. You've studied it, you've watched it,
Right.
caged it, it's been part of your life, but it no longer controls. It no longer has no direct influence on you. Very
Mhm.
difficult, and it takes a lot of willpower. Heroin
Mm.
is one of those really strong substances that it takes a lot of willpower to fight. And cigarettes also very difficult.
I know.
Cigarettes
I've
are
never
really
used
tough.
heroin, but I've used cigarettes a lot. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, very hard
Hard.
to get rid of because it's social.
Mhm.
It has a lot of different ways of becoming part of your
Mhm.
life, um, and of course, it doesn't just annihilate you. So what's wrong with it? It's very safe, but
Mhm.
Um, it unto itself is also something that gets its clutches in you and tells you what to do, when to do it,
Mhm.
what your desires are. And it also can be
Mhm.
caged and observed. And you can watch yourself
Mhm.
interact with it and it trying to
Mhm.
influence you to smoke or whatever,
Mhm.
after eating or whatever, that whole
Mhm.
after thing.
Mhm.
Uh, my advice for people is always give it a month of observation, no control, um, take a few challenges and work to release the obligation that you have to smoke by smoking. Which sounds counterintuitive, but have a cigarette and see if it forces you back into it or if you're able to just not smoke after that one cigarette.
Mhm.
And then you have true control over that thing.
Mm.
Um, I wouldn't recommend that with a lot of different substances. Alcohol, one tends to turn into several. So it's
Mhm.
very dangerous to just go after that and say, oh, okay, I think I'm good now. Let me have a
Mhm.
beer and try it and see what happens or whatever. Uh,
Mhm. I've
you
sat in
know,
meetings with many people who,
yeah,
yeah, say,
that's
"Oh
a,
my god, it was just a glass of wine."
right. It's one of
Yeah.
those, just
Yeah.
one inebriates you so much that you lose the will. You lose
And
your
so
will.
the expression is, "One is too many and a thousand's not enough."
Right, right, right. It's a never ending thing.
That yeah, so
Yeah.
I
Anything
get
that
it.
takes away your willpower to act
Mhm.
on your own in the moment or in that high
Mhm.
can be very detrimental and dangerous. So it's most important to curb it and to cage it,
Mhm.
to locate how it's affecting you and observe where it's trying to come into your life. And some of these things are very difficult to just get rid of once they're in,
Right.
you know.
It's true.
But it's a war zone. I mean, there is so much of this fentanyl and fentanyl out in the world
Right.
that is, I mean, it's everywhere. It's everywhere you
Mhm.
look. I don't know if
Mhm.
they've passed any laws to um, help curtail the amount that's flooding into the country, legally or illegally. I don't. I'm sure they've done something on the legal front with the drug companies, but I know it's being produced in other countries and coming in illegally as well. Do you have anything as far as an awareness of the news on that
I
regard? As far as,
do.
yeah,
So I am a person that likes knowledge.
yeah,
Data satisfies my itch. And so I've read several books on the opioid crisis, and I've, uh, of course, a lot of documentaries. But so the Sacklers, uh, they're the Purdue Pharma.
yeah.
Um, so they had actually taken all their money out of the company, and they had dispersed it to the family members.
Hmm.
And so the court case to determine whether they had to give back their own money, um, that court case just resolved
Mm-hmm.
about a month ago,
Oh,
and it was decided they did not have to give up their personal money. So they had bankrupted Purdue
wow.
after having given everybody their money, their family
Payout.
money.
Yeah.
So, I would say no, they haven't had to be responsible.
Yeah. Not at all.
Mm-mm.
Purdue is no longer producing fentanyl?
Oh, no, they are.
Ah, okay.
They're just in bankruptcy,
I see.
and, the irony is, that they do there's, they have to pay I think it was 670 million or something that was given as a class action suit.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so the irony is that Purdue has to keep producing so that they can pay those
They can,
people.
yeah, they can pay it off, right?
Mhm.
Or produce
Right.
another chemical drug or whatever to
Yeah,
take
because
its
they're
place.
responsible for so Arthur Sackler, the head guy, he was responsible for the Librium and Valium.
Yeah, Valium, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, and so they did a payout. So the board
They
and
did. They
everybody
did a
got money,
payout, but
and they're
they
like,
never had
oh,
to say they did anything wrong, so any of that stuff, it was
right,
just a class action suit they settled.
right, from
Mhm,
the company.
mhm,
But the Sacklers don't have to
and no
pay
one went
anything
to
out.
jail. Please believe me, no one went to jail.
Right, of course, right.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's a
mhm,
tricky thing.
mhm,
Doesn't feel like justice for the amount of social damage done,
mhm.
and it's very extensive, and it's still going on. There's a lot of illegal fentanyl too. I think it's being produced in China or somewhere like that, right?
Yeah,
Um,
but in all honesty, like, when you sorta look at, like Facebook and Instagram and the pharmacies and, all of the stuff that parents are up against,
yeah, it's a
of
lot.
course it's not all on me. How could it be all on any parent
Right.
that there's too many bigger forces at
Yeah.
and you do your best, and the reality is you don't get to rule the world.
Right. You don't get to rule the world.
Somebody else's job for the day. It's not mine though.
Yeah. I mean what you can do is shield, but you can only shield so much. It comes from all directions. It's
Yeah,
and younger and younger ages.
sure.
Um, so there's a lot
Mhm.
socially going on that is against the parent from being able to do what they feel is a good job, you know,
Mhm.
and you can do what you consider to be a good job, and there's still just so much influence going on.
Mhm.
Very tricky, very tricky
Sure.
times.
Mhm.
And the demand for a phone is probably earlier and earlier and earlier. I like how you
Mhm.
said you didn't do a phone with internet. You had the safety of having a phone, just not
Mhm.
the
Oh yeah. Oh
wild
my god.
world of the web.
You cannot believe how much crap they gave me.
Oh yeah,
For years, it was all about all my friends have the internet, and I'm like, "Yeah, sorry."
yeah. I wonder
Yeah.
if they had little burner phones that they
No,
had on the
well,
side.
okay, the one that had the drugs, yeah, he
Yeah.
did,
Oh, I'm sure.
but the
Right.
other ones, they just
Yeah.
my daughter went without a phone because she had broken her phone, she threw it against the wall, and I
Okay.
wouldn't replace it, and so she lived without a phone for, like, a year and a half,
Wow.
and then because she had to earn the money to get a phone,
Yeah.
and then when she got her phone, she was like, "Oh, this isn't I don't like my phone."
Yeah.
Now she's
Like
the
life without
physicist.
it. Right.
She's the physicist, right?
Yeah.
So she's like, "Oh, I get so much done without my phone."
That's the reality.
That's
Do
the reality, right?
there's so much that we lose in what they
Yeah,
call doom scrolling, where you're just endlessly scrolling through social medias or the
yeah,
internet news or whatever.
mhm,
There's no point to it, and it's just a time suck. It completely wastes a day away
Mhm.
if you just want to sit there on the phone. And you can. You can just sit there on the
Mhm.
phone and do what seems to be pointless scrolling, and are you studying? Oh, no, I haven't been studying. I've been just looking at Facebook or whatever.
Mhm. Yeah.
It's
Right.
definitely not a great way for a kid to
Mm-mm.
be, coming up into the world. But if they
I
see it
don't
from their
think.
parents, then it's going to be one of those things where they're just associating that as normal, you know.
Right.
And that, again, it's a lot going on in the world, a lot of things. Do you
A lot of
have
good
some
things though.
tips? Do you have
Oh,
tips in your book as far as methods for people to maybe find some balance and serenity in their life?
yeah. So there's one chapter it's the daffodil and the condom.
Hmm.
I know that sounds weird, but I was walking through the college one day and there was a daffodil. I never saw this kind of daffodil, so I took my phone out to take a picture of it. And when I was putting my phone away, I looked and I was standing on a used condom, and which isn't sexy, right?
Yeah, like, oh,
Not if it's not yours, right? So
even
not
if, right?
sexy. So I started to wonder,
Hmm.
like, how did the condom get here? Was it like, so I started going through this little thought process in my head. Was it somebody being careful? Were they homeless people? Like,
Right.
but I was so focused on this disgusting condom
Yeah.
that and not focused on the daffodil.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I started to think, oh God, why do I do that? Why do I focus on the disgusting and not the beauty?
Yeah.
Because both are offered all day long.
Right.
And I just keep turning, well, I don't anymore, but I've made it my practice to not look toward the disgusting. I need to
Hmm.
know the disgusting is there. I don't have to keep focusing on it though. I could
Right.
just keep looking at the daffodils, right?
Yeah. It's
Um,
a choice.
it is choice.
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing that I think was really important to my recovery was learning how I learn things.
Hmm.
Um, so I had read a book called Inner Tennis, and it was, it's kind of it's a sports book, right? But it works for me too. So it had to do with when I'm learning something, how am I self-talking?
Hmm. Mm-hmm.
How do I learn?
Right.
And so I took a class Zumba, which I knew nothing about. I didn't know how to dance, nothing. And it felt really odd to be dancing when my life was in this shambles.
Hmm.
And it felt like my arms were heavy and my legs were heavy. But what was interesting about it was how I was talking to myself when I was making mistakes.
Hmm.
And then so just observing, like you talk about observing,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
did a lot of that, like,
Hmm.
because it didn't mean anything. Nothing was weighing on the fact if I never learned how to dance, it would be fine too, right?
Right. Right.
So a
Yeah.
non-thing. It wasn't gonna affect my life in any kind of way other than I wonder what I could learn about how I learn and
Yeah.
how I interact with myself when I'm doing something that's new and hard.
Yeah.
Zumba's actually hard. It doesn't seem like it, but it is. So I started listening to the way I was talking to myself, and God, I wouldn't talk to anybody the way I was talking to myself, right? Like
Yeah.
there's no person on the face of the earth that I would be talking to the way I was talking to myself as I was making mistakes in something that had no importance other than this thing that I'm doing, right?
Achievement.
But
Achievement.
it just nothing other
Yeah.
than it is what it is, right?
Dancing. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And but I'm like shaming myself. I wouldn't even look in the mirror.
Hmm.
Like you're supposed to look in the mirror. I
Yeah.
wouldn't even look in the mirror.
Wow.
And so I would, if I if I had to coach somebody through this, I would say learn to dance.
Hmm.
Do something that is so unlike yourself,
Yeah. Oh, I like that. Yeah.
and then just sink into it. See how you treat yourself while you're learning.
Mm-hmm.
'Cause it was so imperative. It took me so long to look in the mirror, and then when I finally looked in the mirror, I just realized, "Oh, shit, I just need a haircut. I'm fine. I just need to cut my hair," right?
Yeah. Yeah.
It was fine. I didn't look like I was a fish out of water. I looked fine, but it was just I would say learn to dance. Do something that is unlike
Yeah.
yourself and just really sink into, um, this life that you've been given.
Mm-hmm. So do
'Cause
something out of the box, basically.
yeah, but it's yes,
Yeah.
so unlike you.
Right. Something that
Um,
why would you be good at it? And then
well,
observe
right, like
how you beat
right,
yourself up over something that, of course, you're not good at
or
it.
maybe you don't, or maybe you
Or maybe
learn
you
to
don't.
master treating yourself better, right?
Right.
Like
Right.
like, that's what I ended up doing was learning to treat myself better.
Yeah. Yeah. So by learning something new and something that's counterintuitive to what you would normally do, it
Mhm.
serves as a good distraction and a good way to self condition, self evaluate, and give yourself some space. Um, was that part of what you were doing? Was a lot of these different activities, physical, um, physical strenuous activities like dancing, that kind of thing? Was
Climbing a
that
mountain. I know,
climbing? Yeah,
climbing a
climbing,
mountain's big
hiking.
too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, it was good. It got me out of my head and
Right.
into my body so that I wasn't spinning in my body all the time or in my head. I
Yeah.
was more in my body and I was more connected to my body. And while I'm being connected to my body and I'm being connected to my mind, my other 2 kids, they started joining me and
Hmm.
hiking with me and doing
Yeah.
all kinds of things with me. So we trained to do Mount Shasta together, and we did this climb this mountain together
Wow.
because we were going to do some hard stuff. And
Yeah.
so how could we do hard stuff together? And it was really fun training with them and not and so we were talking about stuff that we were all doing, and it wasn't about him.
Right.
It was
Dwelling.
about and it was good for us physically, and
Yeah.
it was good for us to see the beauty and all of those things. So I would yeah, I mean, like, if I had to say some of the things that I did that were really good for me, it was that, physical activity, getting out of my head.
Yeah. And bonding with your family in an
Mhm,
activity that was not bonding and trauma,
mhm.
because that was what was happening. Probably was
And the
everybody was having to handle the trauma happening.
they were. So it wasn't just it was happening to the whole family.
Yeah.
And then the other thing that I could say that I did that I'm glad I did, but it took me a minute to figure it out, was, I started watching how many times I said his name.
Hmm.
Like, was he absorbing all of my conversations? Um, because that wears people out, and I needed people to connect with. And if
Right.
I was wearing them out by constantly talking about this thing that I couldn't do anything about, they couldn't do anything about, it's super depressing and it's scary. People get very frightened to understand how powerless we are over our own lives.
Right.
People don't want to think about that. They don't wanna think that their children that it could have easily have been them and not me.
Right.
They don't like thinking on that. So, I did start to monitor how often I talked about it, And if somebody asked me about it, I wouldn't bring it up until somebody asked me about it. And then I might say a couple of sentences, very general,
Mm-hmm.
um, not lying, but just saying, look, it's painful and I don't have any new stuff to say.
Yeah.
Can we talk about something else?
Well, you also
Like,
learned that.
I just had to give him
Yeah.
less time
Right.
in my life.
You learned how to do that. You had to go through the process where you were really dragging it up often and saying, "Oh, wait a minute, this isn't helping anybody." Yeah,
Anybody,
right.
especially me,
Especially
because
you, exactly.
it was severing,
Everything.
because like how many times is a friend going to call you to go to a movie if all you're talking about is this despair?
Yeah,
Like they're not going to. So I learned to encapsulate it
yeah,
so that people still wanted to to be connected to me.
right. Because you were that trauma, as I said, it was its own entity. The trauma
Yeah,
was intersecting into your life, and then you were
everywhere.
beginning to become part of the spreading of the trauma. And it's crazy how it happens, but that's like an electrical pulse that comes out, and it just arcs and looks for ground, and it finds itself in people
And you
wherever it
start
can go.
wearing people out.
Yeah, and then
And
it's
you
your
need
trauma.
those people.
Yeah,
That's the thing. You need those people. You need them to connect with you and to
hmm
be with you and remind you of who you are, but they're not going to stay.
yeah, yeah. That's very powerful. One of the things we do in our practice is we don't dwell and constantly bring up the trauma. We look for it, we find it, we re-experience, explore it, and clear it, and then that's it. And if you constantly bring it up, you're constantly giving it a more electrical charge, and that
Mhm.
electrical charge just keeps generating more energy, and it just keeps on being itself. So you don't want to dwell in the
Mhm.
trauma. You want to move past it, clear it, discharge it,
Mhm.
and move on. And by doing what you were doing, and then by curtailing that, you were gaining a very important tool, which is to do that encapsulation, to recognize that your influence on others was going to hamper your ability to feel whole.
Mhm.
And you needed the community. You needed people to just be who they were.
With
And
me.
yes, yeah.
Yeah. And then
And
the other thing that I would say was helpful,
mhm,
um, trying to say it right. I don't know how to express. I wouldn't let people shame me about it.
mhm,
The people started getting really into the, well, what went wrong and
yeah,
what did you guys do wrong and nothing.
right,
Like stop. And I understand their fear. Their fear is if I know what you did wrong, then I won't do that thing and
hmm
I won't be you. And
right,
I didn't buy into I stopped buying into that.
yeah,
So I would challenge people to see are you because I was buying that for a long
right,
time.
right,
And then And then the other thing that I learned about trauma was that I as l- I'm really embarrassed to say this, but it's an actual thing that happened.
mm,
So I'll say it, which is that as long as I had the trauma, I had a reason to not function entirely. I had a because.
right, right,
And so in letting go of the trauma, I'm letting go of the because. And it's just me,
yeah,
and there's no because there.
That's good.
And
Yeah.
so I had to let go of the because.
Yeah, that's very powerful. So in the
And it
trauma,
was
that's the why, and why is there this trauma? And when you go into the future, when you move away from the trauma and you've lived life, you have to
right.
seek that why. What is the influence today that is causing this issue? It's that trauma, and once
Mhm.
you get to the why, you can get rid of the trauma because it's its own thing. It's not you. It's its own thing. It's the because, and you need to get that out of the way because then it's controlling you. Because you got
Right.
something you can point a finger at and say it's not me.
Yeah, it's
This is
because
why
of
right here.
this. This is
Yeah,
it.
right,
And it just felt like that was going me holding the trauma wasn't going to help my son.
right. Yeah,
Like my son, when he does get better, and I believe he will, he needs a whole person and a whole family to come back to.
right.
But if we're all shredded, it's not going to help him.
Yeah, fully ready to enable. Or let's get back to it, right back
Yeah,
where we
right.
were. It's not
Right.
helpful, and
Not helpful.
he'll be looking
Yeah.
for foundation and strength
Yeah.
and honesty. You know,
And joy.
yeah, yeah,
And
not
joy.
dwelling in the
Yeah.
past because
Right.
that's just you can't
You
dwell
can't.
there.
Mm-mm.
Or here we are
Right.
in the future.
Yep.
How many pages is the book?
Oh, okay, so I've had several people tell me they've read it in one sitting.
Hmm.
It's less than 200 pages. I'm
Okay.
pretty succinct in it.
Yeah.
I don't think I need to absorb somebody's whole life. It's a short, simple story
Right.
about a woman who's very lost and finding her way through a very difficult time
Yeah.
and laughing and crying all the way through it.
Yeah. That's good.
So the laughter and the tears show up.
Okay.
And you might not like me in the end.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you might go, you know, I I I don't I think I want the Narcan in my house. I think I think I want to do it differently. And that is so I'm not saying this is the right way. I am saying this is how I did it.
It's your way. Yeah.
This is my way.
Right.
And I just challenge us as parents to rethink parenthood and what we're
Mm.
really doing.
Right. Yeah. It's strong.
Mhm.
And where can people find the book?
Oh, it's on Amazon and Audible. It's called
Oh,
Loving Dylan
Loving
by
Dylan.
J. Marie.
Okay. So on Amazon, it's um,
Loving Dylan.
downloadable as well, ebook, or is it just a
Yeah, ebook
paperback?
too. Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
And then
Everywhere you
Audible.
can accept it. Yeah, and Audible as well.
That's great.
Mhm.
Yeah, fantastic. Well, thank you so much for being
Thank
here
you.
today and sharing your story.
Oh, it was fun.
And
Thank you.
yeah, you have a great message.
Oh, thank you. You do too.
It's
I love
very
it.
powerful. Yeah.
Very powerful. Good
Um,
deal.
I really hope that this book takes off
Me
and
too.
um, with the
No, I
way
mean,
things
not
are
for the
going.
like, it would be nice for the money and all that. That's not a thing.
Yeah.
It's more about, I want people to feel okay with their parenting and
Yeah.
just feeling empowered to take back their life.
Yeah. Well,
That
there's a lot
that
of
would
people,
be
a lot of families that are
mhm.
currently in the place that you were at before
I
that are
know.
trying to figure
Mhm.
out how do I do this? It's
Yeah,
very heavy.
and
And I
guilt.
feel like the guilt and the shame. I had
Oh,
a guest on near the I think in February that Lois Hollis, and her whole thing was get rid of the guilt, get rid of the shame. It doesn't
yeah,
belong there.
I
It's not
know. It
real.
doesn't help anything.
Doesn't do anything for anybody. And
Nope.
it's powerful when you can figure out a way to get rid of that because it doesn't
Mhm.
belong there. It's not helping.
Yeah.
Um, it
Well,
sounds
I mean,
like your
I
book
don't know.
has
The
that.
Catholic Church has done a really good job with the guilt. They've made a
Yeah,
ton of money on the guilt.
yeah, yeah.
I'm
Yes,
kidding.
yes.
I'm sorry.
You've got lots of flock, right?
Yeah.
But it sounds like your book has, some very like good approaches towards helping, modern current families that are dealing with this and not
Mhm.
sure where to go. And I think that that's really important. Now, that's a good message to get out there. There's maybe I don't want to say millions, and it may be millions. I wouldn't want to say that that's how many families are dealing with this currently. Definitely thousands of
Mhm.
families are dealing with this type of trauma right now,
Mhm.
and it probably is millions, and that's really unfortunate.
Mhm.
But I feel like if everybody becomes more responsible, and learn good tools to potentially use to help them through these situations, that will in turn benefit society, benefit everybody, and benefit their families.
So, I mean, in terms so, the way I started looking at it was like it was an ugly gift that I was
Yeah,
given.
right,
I mean, it's not a gift I wanted. It wasn't like I don't want anybody to have this gift, but there's no sense in wasting a tragedy.
right.
Like,
Yeah,
that's just stupid to waste a tragedy. It's happening. You didn't cause it. You can't make somebody do heroin. That's crazy.
right.
But as long as it's happening, we might as well use these experiences to grow.
To boomerang,
Mhm.
potentially to climb Mount Shasta. You know.
Yeah, to climb Mount Shasta. Oh, the funny part about it is that my daughter,
Mm.
she got altitude sick and
Oh.
just threw up curry everywhere. It was all over the snow. It was
Oh.
hilarious. No,
Did
I
you get to
mean,
see it on the way back down too?
it was awful.
Oh boy.
It was hilarious, but anyway.
Yeah. Well,
Oh,
thank
thank
you
you for
again.
taking so
Yeah,
much time. I
no
appreciate
problem.
it. Oh, it
And
was good. Thank you.
yeah, yeah, and I hope this gets out there, and I hope
Me
you
too.
have great success with the book.